I'm Greg Barron, RCEDC's president, and we have a very exciting session planned for you. Now, every quarter, the Leadership Council meets to review the results of our efforts and guide the organization in its mission. And we really could not do the work that we do without our many volunteers. We have 5 different volunteer bodies, 3 loan committees, a board of directors, and this Leadership Council that you're joining with this morning. These dedicated individuals invest their time and energy to ensure that our mission continues to be relevant and impactful. So I really want to have a special shout out right now to these volunteers for their investment in Racine County's future. A special side note to the Leadership Council members who are here this morning, all of the normal meeting materials were sent to you and include the regular items such as our current financial statements and our quarterly reports. If you have any questions or comments, please get a hold of Jenny after the meeting with any questions. Just send her an email. Let's transition to this morning's event. Many of our quarterly meetings include guest speakers that inform our Leadership Council about current events and challenges and opportunities in our region. These topics are so critical that we believe it's important to open our meetings to the general public. So welcome to all of you who are joining us. We've assembled an incredible panel of developers who have decades of experience working on a variety of transactions in multiple markets. Most importantly, each of these developers has made considerable investments in our area. I have no doubt that many of you will have many questions for our panelists. So I'm going to keep a very careful eye on the chat function, and so is Jenny, and we'll try to integrate your questions into the discussion. Let me introduce our distinguished panelists. First, please welcome Don Schoenheiter, Executive Vice President and Marketing Leader for the Midwest at Hillwood. Don has more than 30 years of real estate sales, development, and management experience. Prior to joining Hillwood, Don has worked at Liberty Property Trust, Jones Development, and Trammell Crow. In 2019, Hillwood entered the Racine County market when it acquired land and buildings in Yorkville's Grandview Business Park. In 2020, the company announced its plans to construct multiple buildings totaling approximately 800,000 square feet. I know that Don is in the final stages of planning the company's next investment, which will be of great benefit to our business expansion and recruitment activities. So welcome, Don. Next, we have Stu Weingart of Wangard Partners with us this morning. Although Don has 3 decades of experience, Stu has 4. Stu is the chairman and CEO of Wangard Partners. The company was founded in 1992 with the intention of being a development company with a primary focus on building communities. Wangard Partners has been very active throughout Wisconsin, and we were fortunate to attract their attention in 2019. In an effort to attract more talent and residents to the area, Stu's team developed a 278-unit apartment development, Tivoli Green in Mount Pleasant. We're also pleased to know that the company is considering an industrial investment in Yorkville. So welcome, Stu. Finally, we have Bill Linville of Scannell Properties. Bill is a managing director with Scannell Properties and is involved in every aspect of the company's land and project development investments. Bill spent most of his career as an executive officer with Duke Realty Investments. Throughout his career, he has been personally involved in creating an industrial portfolio of over 100 million square feet and 40 business parks across the country. Early this year, we were thrilled to celebrate with Caledonia and Scannell Properties when the company announced its plans to build 3 buildings that will total 1 million square feet in the DeBack Farms Business Park. One of these buildings is under construction, and I understand plans for the second building are in the review stage. So I really appreciate our panelists for joining us today. They bring a ton of experience and will give us great perspective. So at this point, just a reminder that we're welcoming everybody to use the chat function, and we'll be drawing you in with your questions through chat. So gentlemen, once again, thank you for joining us. Let's dive into a few questions. And I want to start with a general question for each of the panelists to consider. And the first question is this: given that each of our panelists has industrial investments in Racine County or the region, can each of you share your perspective on what is happening in our local real estate market at this time? So I'm going to call on each of you to jump in with a perspective on that. And maybe Don, you can lead the way with your perspective on that question.
Thanks, Greg, very much. And thank you for the opportunity to join you. It's great to be a part of it. And I want to thank you specifically for using my high school yearbook photo on the introduction. That was a great shot. So
hey, you're welcome.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I think all of us on this call, and many of us who are listening on this call, would say that the activity in Racine County and throughout Wisconsin and throughout the country has been extremely active, extremely busy. We're as busy as we probably ever have been, and we don't see any of that changing in the foreseeable future. The economic conditions, the climate that we're enjoying, that we're a part of, certainly the whole buzz around the e-commerce model that companies have and continue to embrace, is really continuing to keep our business at a fever pitch. And we're delighted that we're able to continue to develop assets in Racine County and look forward to doing more.
Great. Thank you for that perspective, Don. Why don't we hear from Stu?
Thank you, Greg. Greg, there are storm clouds on the horizon, and you're probably saying, oh my gosh, everything's wonderful right now throughout the nation. It's good business for industrial real estate. I always look at the butterfly effect. The little waving of butterfly wings in China creates a typhoon in California. So we're dealing with that right now, and yet this is probably the strongest industrial market that we've ever seen. I'm not as deep in the industrial market as the other folks. We do have a lot pending right now. Here's some of the things locally, though, we have to pay attention to. Foxconn was a catalyst for us, and because of that, we completed the improvements of the freeway from the Kenosha border all the way up to Mitchell Field. And we're continuing to see movement across Illinois-Wisconsin border. Every time somebody south of the border is considering a new plant or a new plant expansion, they're going to look to us as the next spot. And we now are a very short trip away from the border. So the region looks pretty good right now.
Thank you, Stu. Over to you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll echo Don's comments that it's nice to be with you. Thanks for inviting me. Well, I think from our answers, you can see it's a multifaceted issue, what the drivers are in creating any market momentum. And it's not any single thing, but one thing I can tell you, having spent 35 years in industrial development, is it is an efficient system to drive cost out. It's all about getting cost out of the delivery system. And it's kind of like Schwarzkopf said in Desert Storm, war's about logistics. Well, moving goods is industrial's about logistics. And so I think the big drivers that have helped southeastern Wisconsin are primarily all cost related. They it's overflow from one of the biggest industrial markets in the world, which is the Chicago metropolitan area. And people can do business a little cheaper across the border. That's because land's cheaper. It's because building costs are a little cheaper. And then labor is one of the largest components in the matrix of what logistics costs. And labor's cheaper and labor's more available. And people can live more cheaply up there, so they can pay a little lower wages. And so those are, I think, the biggest things that have really created the catalyst for growth. Plus, Wisconsin is a good quality of life, and so employers like being there.
Great. Thanks, Bill. So my next question, I'm going to hit Don and Bill up. So you guys listen up here. If there are any bright spots amidst COVID-related challenges, industrial real estate appears healthy. How has COVID impacted your industrial portfolios? And I'll ask Don first.
Yeah, Greg, it's had an impact would be an understatement. You know, one of our biggest e-commerce customers who we do business with all over the country, all over the world, has told us that the pandemic has actually accelerated their e-commerce development forward 5 years. And so what they're having to do is more quickly respond to Bill's comment. You've got to respond to opportunities, you've got to respond to challenges. But at the same time, at the end of 19, we met with a large investment bank. And we talked about e-commerce and their customers. And they told us at that point that only 40% of the top 100 retailers in the country had an e-commerce strategy. So think about what's had to have taken place to accommodate the issues with COVID, the demand from COVID, the demand from the e-commerce growth in a very short period of time. So to say that, again, we've been extraordinarily busy and COVID has really pushed that button to make it go even more quickly.
Thanks, Don. Bill, how about your industrial portfolios? How has COVID impacted your business?
Yeah, well, the most obvious is what Don just touched on, and that's the acceleration of the e-commerce phenomenon. You know, going into COVID, we all knew Amazon was a force. And other retailers, Target, Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart, et cetera, were going to have to step up and develop their own e-commerce strategies, which Don alluded to. It's accelerated that. I read a statistic the year before COVID that Amazon, or excuse me, e-commerce represented about 17% of all point of sales in retail. So every time somebody bought something, 17 out of 100 times it was being done over the computer as opposed to going into a store. I haven't seen a recent statistic, but my guess is that that's above 40% now. It's at least 1 out of 3 purchases are happening online, and Amazon represents 50% of that. So that is the largest effect it's had. I think just quickly, another thing that we're only starting to see the beginning of is bringing manufacturing or some component of manufacturing back domestically. We've all realized we can't depend on overseas for our supplies to the extent that we have been. So that, I think, is a future phenomenon that we're yet to see the full effect of.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Stu, I have a question for you. We've all been reading about this. As the U.S. economy emerges, the U.S. labor market remains a really, really big area of concern. And economists are telling us that the challenges are very widespread. In your experience, Stu, are you seeing some industries more impacted by this challenge than others? Stu, you're on mute.
Got it. Thank
There
you.
we go.
Greg, thank you. It's not as if you got one area much more heavily impacted than another. You're seeing some industries, those that have already heavily automated, being a little bit more resilient. But even with that, there's a combination of the pandemic saying, okay, let's consider where we want to live or in our lifestyle, and more flexible response from employers. You're seeing where somebody lives affecting the workforce. Our company is regional in nature, and so we go all the way up to Minneapolis, but we have a large project in Chippewa Falls outside Eau Claire, and then we're along the Illinois-Wisconsin border, and we're hearing the same thing. We're hearing that employers are going to go where the workforce is, the skill of the workforce that they have, and where it's matched properly. So that's part of it. The other thing, and this is something that's good for the real estate industry, but you have to go and say, let's take a look at society. we're seeing a lot of the people that are approaching us about new manufacturing facilities that are not planning on adding significantly to their headcount. What they're doing is they're pouring a lot of money into technology so they can operate their business efficiently without having to grow that workforce. And in some cases, they're saying, you know, we're okay with trimming the workforce. And they need to grow. There's demand for their product. And again, it's matching skills with the jobs.
Stu, in your experience over the past few months, are there communities that are addressing the shortcomings from the labor restriction better than others that you could cite?
We're seeing some interesting ideas coming from the single family industry, working with economic development agencies. And that's basically saying, let's figure out a way to provide single family residential units that are more affordable. And so we're working with some communities and single family home builders to match up single family developments with business parks. And the single family development creates immediate increment. The fact that it's in a TIF and there's a balance that's required there allows this single family developer to deliver high quality housing at a lower price point. And so what are you doing? You're attracting workforce.
Okay, thank you, Stu. Don and Bill, the next question's coming your way. And as you're both aware, there's a good amount of spec development occurring in Racine County and throughout southeastern Wisconsin right now. In addition to new construction, existing building space continues to be leased. So I'm interested in, from your experience, what industry sectors are absorbing the majority of existing space? And maybe Don, we can hear from you first.
Yeah, Greg, I think it's it's kind of three categories. Needless to say, it's warehouse, logistics, e-commerce. It's consumer products companies. I mean, we have one of the biggest consumer products companies in the world in SC Johnson, just down the street. And then the food related business. Again, the pandemic has made people think differently about what they have in their homes, how often they need to go to the store, how much toilet paper they need to have in their basement. And so the idea that the food demand, particularly freezer cooler and grocery related items, we've all seen over the last year or so, kind of the wave of going into a grocery store and not seeing the shelves full. And when was the last time any of us saw that, not only in the Midwest, but in the US? So I don't think there's any doubt that consumer products, consumer staples are going to continue to drive that business. And our e-commerce customers are driving that part of the business as well.
Great, thanks, Don. Bill, over to you.
Yeah. Well, I agree with Don, and some of our answers are kind of streams of consciousness. They're not necessarily a full thesis given the time, but a couple of points on this. One, in the development business, we're always dancing around the supply-demand equilibrium, and developers are notorious for running the game. We just keep pushing supply until we oversupply it, and then everything falls into a recession. I think we've all of us on this call have probably been worried about that, because if you look at the last, the post-recession construction volume, it's been as big a supply pipeline as we've probably ever seen. Yet the vacancies are staying extremely low. The vacancies are as low by a factor of 2 or 3 times what I've ever seen in my career. I mean, historically, we used to start a new building if vacancies got below a 9% level, because we figured we could lease it up, with worst case within 24 months, and we could carry it and make that work. I mean, I just looked at some Chicago submarkets yesterday for a new product we're getting ready to do. The vacancy is below 2% in one of the submarkets. And, we're rarely seeing any submarket that has a vacancy of over 5% right now. So I think that it's pretty phenomenal that we've had that kind of robust supply, and yet the demand is meeting it. And it's primarily coming from this e-commerce, but as Don said, it's other factors too, other industry sources.
Okay, thanks, Bill. I want to build on your e-commerce point, and earlier you cited some numbers from U.S. Commerce Department. So Don, I'm coming over your way again, and obviously these e-commerce sales are definitely impacting the real estate market. Can you shed some light, Don, on changes that you're seeing as a result of companies like Amazon, Walmart, or other big box retailers that are investing to take advantage of this growth of online sales?
Yeah, I think so. We mentioned, and you've mentioned several times, Greg, Amazon's model is somewhat different than a lot of others, but their platform is broadening. It used to be when you got on Amazon 5 years ago, it was really special to get something in 2 days.
Right.
Now the demand, particularly in urban areas, is people are expecting stuff in 2 to 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And so Amazon and other e-commerce companies need to get closer to the population base. They need to be able to deliver product more quickly, more streamlined. The other side of this is the retailers, as an example, have a little different model. If you think about the Walmarts and the Targets of the world, they've been able to grow their e-commerce platform by fulfillment out of the stores. I can tell you one of the major retailers in the country, a clothing retailer, fulfills over 50% of their online orders through their store operations. And we're seeing the same thing with the Walmarts and the Targets and the Lowe's and the Home Depots, as Bill mentioned. The big challenge for them right now is they have to figure out how to handle fulfillment for the stores. I mentioned a minute ago about going to the grocery store and not seeing things on the shelves. They're having the same struggle. They need to make sure that they're continuing to fulfill their stores, because not only are the retail operations still active and busy, but they're fulfilling their e-commerce platform from back of the house and the store operation.
Thanks, Don. Stu, I was wondering if you could take a few seconds and tell us about your residential portfolios, specifically. What do you see the trends going into 2022 and beyond?
Well, we're starting out with a national housing deficit of about 5 million housing units. And in metropolitan Milwaukee, and the reason why I'm bringing up that is because our projects were stabilized in those areas, and the Racine County, Mount Pleasant is still new. The suburban stuff snapped back first as we're coming out of the pandemic. So we're 100% leased, which in the developers world, it's a great thing. And sometimes people are saying you're not charging enough. We're seeing pretty good absorption in Racine County, and we're seeing stronger growth actually on that Kenosha-Racine border. And if you take a look, you'll say, okay, there's more development that has already occurred and stabilized south, and Racine County is just coming into its own right now. So we're bullish. We have enough room for another, if we can put another 1,000 units on that site. And we're patient, so that's going to be done over time.
Can you amplify a bit on your comments regarding office and retail development and what you believe 22 looks like?
Oh my gosh.
How quick can you run?
Yeah. Glad you got that question.
Yeah, thanks, gentlemen. Okay, I'm going to say we're fortunate and we have a balanced portfolio. And we had already started to invest more in industrial pre-pandemic. We put up a $32 million spec office building. That $32 million spec office building is 100,000 square feet. I can build 500,000 square feet of industrial for that. And our industrial is full. And our office has an uncertain future. Now, here's what we're doing to respond, though. Our office buildings have traditionally done well. We're starting to upgrade our buildings pre-pandemic. And the pandemic, after taking the shock of some of the hits associated with it, we're saying, let's move forward with our plans. And that means reinvest in the buildings, do things that create co-working space in the buildings, space where more outdoor spaces, so outdoor patios, restaurants. You're trying to create an excuse for people to go to work in an office building rather than Zoom or through Teams. So that's the quick answer.
Yeah.
We do industrial because there's strong demand and it's very good for the wallet. There's no, it's a great market right now, and I think it has a long way to go. Now, retail in some ways is kind of good for the soul. We're creating gathering spots. We have shrunk our retail portfolio, and we're continuing to do more. So we have $100 million mixed use project. Roughly a third of that is residential that's underway right now.
So Don and Bill, let's roll with this a bit. So we've talked about industrial spec space and the increase of e-commerce giving rise to some of the absorption. What do you see as the main risks for industrial development sector in 22? Don.
Well, I want to piggyback on Stu's comments, and I'm sure that Bill made some reference to it as well. I mean, the labor issue is the number one thing on all of our minds, and most importantly, it's the number one thing on our customers' minds. They can't get people to work in their facilities in a lot of places. And we're looking at sites in communities, not just in the Milwaukee area and Racine County, but around the country, that we would have logically thought would be an absolute slam dunk for warehouse distribution development. And our customers come back and say, we can't get people to come work here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The idea that, you see a lot of things on television in Washington, the signs are, we want to get $15 an hour. Well, our customers have blown through $15 an hour.
Right.
They're at 17 and 18, in some cases 20, and they still can't attract people to work in their facilities. So as Stu mentioned early on, that storm cloud is out there. And I can't remember who mentioned it as well, but we saw the same thing. Prologis did a study saying that they think that e-commerce customers can create between a 20 and 25% efficiency through robotics and technology. And I think that's where this is headed, because our tenants they're having a very difficult time, particularly in these high employee count distribution e-commerce buildings, fulfilling their employee operations.
Thanks, Don. Bill?
Yeah, well, I want to touch on an unintended consequence of a very good thing. We're going through one of the biggest socio-economic behavioral changes that we've seen probably since the Industrial Revolution. And like the Industrial Revolution, which brought a lot of comfort, convenience, health to society, it had unintended consequences like, polluting our environment. I think, and this will be meaningful, especially to any of you on the municipal side, an unintended consequence of the behavioral change of retail going to online, which then means it distributes from warehouses instead of being sold from malls and shopping centers, is the impact of traffic. And we're seeing it as one of the biggest challenges right now across the country. Is you can find a good piece of dirt, all the metrics are right, all the drivers are right, but you can't get it entitled because the community doesn't want the trucks. And I think there's going to be more and more of that. And I'm not sure what the answer is, because these centers are producing incredible amounts of truck and van traffic. We have a customer, not Walmart, but a customer who's asked us to do a group of facilities across the country. And they need 800 to 1,000 parking spots for vans and trucks. Think about that. That's one facility. And all of those hit the roads in a 24-hour period. So I think that's a big challenge going forward.
Thank you, Bill. Just a reminder to all our attendees that I've got my eagle eyes on the chat function. So if you have any questions, be sure to, oh, I've got one right here from Denise. What do you think it would take to bring back more manufacturing from overseas? Issues with the supply chain and shipping from China has made it apparent that current situation is not necessarily sustainable. So maybe Bill, Don, or Stu, if you'd like to jump in on Denise's question. Stu?
Well, I'll jump in for a second. I think at the same time, this is one of our greatest opportunities, but it's one of the most complicated issues affecting real estate that's probably out there, because there's going to be such a huge impact to the cost of doing business for many, many companies if they make a big commitment to bring manufacturing back. You know, unfortunately, the horse left the barn a long time ago in terms of government policy, and they let it all go overseas.
Mhm.
We did. You know, I talked about unintended consequences.
Mhm.
It's probably going to take government policy to bring it back in any meaningful way, because I just don't think corporations will spend the money to retool like they're going to have to do. Or it's going to take a geopolitical event, like, God forbid, we go to war with China or something and we're forced to bring it back. But I think it's an opportunity, but it's a bridge that's a long way off for most companies to make that capital investment.
Thanks, Bill. Don, do you want in on this?
Yeah, my only comment and follow up to Bill, I agree. It's a political, but I think it's also going to be driven by, you know, I love Stu's comment, the storm clouds. There is massive amount of inflation coming our direction. And, you know, the comment about moving product from Asia and having things manufactured there, I read last night, is a luggage company. They do a majority of their business during the holidays. They normally ship about 300 containers of luggage from Asia into the US for the holiday season. It costs them about $2,500 normally to ship a container from Asia, from Thailand, where the product's made, to the US. They haven't been able to get the product here, and to end up getting those containers to the US, they're spending between $15,000 and $18,000 per container to ship a container that has $30,000 worth of product in it.
Yeah.
Now, if you take that and extrapolate that across all the product lines, all the industries, everyone who's dealing with importing product, you're going to see massive amount of inflation coming in. Those are the storm clouds that we worry about. But I think that could also drive more of that manufacturing back to the US.
Thanks, Don. And Denise, thanks for jumping in with that great question. As I mentioned in our introductory remarks, we're really grateful for the investment in Racine County. And I know our community leaders and staff would love to see more investment. So many of you have highlighted our location as one of our greatest assets. So if we have a chance here to talk to our elected leaders as well as our influential business leaders, can you tell us the attributes of communities that your company likes to invest in? So what's special about a sparkling community that draws your investment? And I'll go to Stu first.
Greg, this goes back to some of the comments earlier about onshoring manufacturing. It's not so much what I'm looking for, it's what you find in Racine County. What you're finding in Racine County is pretty good intergovernmental cooperation. So local officials are working with each other. On opposite side of the borders, they're working with each other much better than other areas. Sometimes locally, you may not think that's always the case, but yes, we're seeing that. And so as a investor and developer, what I'm looking for is stability. And our whole world right now is it's tumultuous. We don't know where interest rates are going to go. material, what's happening in China. And so we're looking for stability. And when we get a chance to work with communities like the ones in Racine County, and our first line experiences with Mount Pleasant, they laid out a path that even though there's nothing that's guaranteed, it's more predictable than most.
Mm.
And so we can plan for it. We're making major investments. All the people on this call are. And when you tell somebody, I'm going to deliver a building on X date, you want to make sure the local municipality is backing you up.
Thanks, Stu. Bill, attributes of communities that your company invests in.
I'm sorry, ask that question again.
What are the special attributes of communities that you like to see for your company to invest in?
Well, the main driver for any developer, and we're no exception, is the belief that if you build it, they will come. Nothing else really matters. You have to believe that you can cover your bet and you'll fill your buildings. The things that make us comfortable that will happen are the things we're talking about, but it's primarily driven by either they interchange which one leads the other, but they're driven by either population growth or job growth. Sometimes the jobs come first and then the population follows. Sometimes because of lifestyle decisions, the population's going one direction and then the jobs follow. And you can see it all over the country. And I think that what community planners can primarily do, policy matters, and they can set the policies and they can create the playing field in terms of regulation, but also in terms of infrastructure that makes that growth more likely. You know, it incentivizes the growth and draws the growth.
Thanks, Bill. Don, attributes of communities that your company likes to invest against.
Yeah, I think Stu and Bill both, but Stu particularly, you know, I have a big sign in my office, you know, a circle with a line through it. It says no surprises. Every project we've done in Racine County and continue to do in Racine County, that's the experience we have. No surprises. You know, we like to think that all of us on this call are strategic investors, strategic planners. You know, as Bill said, you know, we're looking for the next opportunity, but we need local, county, state partners on the government side, the public sector side, to think the same way. And we've seen that in Racine County. We've seen very strategic thinking. It's not running to the biggest fire. It's thinking about what happens in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, because those impact the investment decisions we make today. And it's really important, and we're grateful for kind of that strategic thinking that we've seen from local government in Racine County. And I know that sounds like a commercial, but it's really true.
Yeah. Great, thanks, Don. I'm going to jump over to the chat. We've got a couple of great questions here, so I'll read them and I'll look for a response. Do you believe that multifamily residential growth will follow the manufacturing growth in these areas where it's lower cost for business?
Yeah, cool.
I think someone needs to mute their mic there. I'll read the question again. Do you believe that multifamily residential growth will follow the manufacturing growth in these areas where it's lower cost for business? Anyone want to jump on that?
Earlier, I think both Don and Bill talked about wage growth. The wage growth has been so significant that a lot more people can afford the highly amenitized apartment communities that we're developing. And so, yes, it has driven more demand. At the same time, the area that's the number one driver for multifamily demand in our area is healthcare, and then followed right behind that by high-paid jobs in areas like pharmaceutical and even the jobs that are occurring to the south with Haribo. So those are the type of jobs that not only create demand, but also there's resiliency in there. And so as the economies change, they can afford the quality of housing. Housing costs have gone up tremendously. Bill and Don can get into the industrial cost increase, but so we need to make sure that the workforce can afford what we're building also.
Right. Don or Bill?
No, I would agree with Stu, and my only other comment is, and I think we talked about earlier, we really do need to be successful in attracting manufacturing. We really do need to drive right alongside of it the residential component. Employees, a lot of our bigger customers have done studies that employees typically tend to drive no more than 22 to 25 minutes to work. And so if you don't have an adequate quality amount of residential to satisfy those employees that will staff those manufacturing, not only e-commerce and warehouse buildings, but manufacturing and research buildings that Stu mentioned, you're not going to grow the manufacturing base, and those are critical.
Thanks, Don. Bill?
Yeah, I'm not a multifamily expert, but I would say that I think, kind of back to my earlier comment about unintended consequences, one of the challenges right now with distribution being the primary employer is they don't pay like the old manufacturing jobs paid. And you can't look at it on a per hourly rate because it's the buying index power. My dad was a blue collar guy, worked in a factory, raised 5 kids and owned a house. And that'd be a very hard thing to do and my mother didn't work. That'd be a very difficult thing to do today in terms of buying power. And then you also, I think, have just a lifestyle preference in the Gen Xers and the younger people that they don't really want to own a house necessarily. They don't want the hidden costs of that. They don't want the responsibilities. So I do think that for a lot of reasons, multifamily is going to fill a real need that single family may be too expensive for.
Thanks, Bill. Again, if you have any questions, folks, just hop into the chat there. We have another question from Tom, and thank you for that question we just reviewed, Todd. From Tom, Amazon has taken over a few old shopping malls. Does anyone have knowledge of those activities? Amazon taking over a few old shopping malls. Anyone know anything about that?
Well, I'll take a stab at that because we've done some of you may know that one of our biggest customers at Scannell Properties, it's really the account that formed the basis of our company was the relationship with FedEx Ground. We've done, I think now over 300 FedEx projects over a 25-year period. And we've recently completed a little bit of a white paper analysis for them about whether we could retrofit retail centers. And for some distribution uses, it may be possible for small last mile type sort centers, but the problem is the retail buildings were not really built to accommodate true distribution. Many of them you can't put docks in, or you can't put enough docks. They're oftentimes in locations that the ingress egress is very challenging. Back to my comment about traffic, the communities don't want to rezone them because it's really not set up for truck traffic. It was set up for automobile traffic. So I think there are real challenges to just saying across the board that you can retrofit existing retail. I think what we'll see more of is that it gets demoed and the sites are repurposed rather than the buildings being repurposed. But I'm interested what the others think. I'm sure they're seeing it too.
Yeah. Okay, so I've got my final question. So I've got an eye to this chat here, which I'd love to hear from each of you. And the question is, with the higher costs of construction that we've been talking about, and both materials and labor, how has this situation impacted your decision to move forward with projects and your timeline to delivery for these projects? So maybe Stu, you could jump in first.
Well, the demand side of it is absorbing these higher costs. It's the delivery, that's the data delivery that's a challenge. And so the three things that we're focused on at this moment is steel delivery dates, precast delivery dates, and roofing materials, including insulation. And so with steel, in some cases, we've actually changed the way that we're building these buildings. So in the past, you used trusses, steel trusses. In some cases, we're buying more tonnage and going with a wide flange structural member. Precast pricing is still relatively consistent. It's just the lead time. Heck, I built a 150,000 square foot building in 2008 in 106 days. Can't do that now. Not at all. Rubber roofing is tough to get. Insulation is tough to get. I'm going to let the other gentleman talk about this.
Okay, thanks, Stu. How about you, Bill?
Well, it's a huge challenge, and it's causing us to have to really evaluate projects in a different way. Just to give you a metric, we look very closely at a project that we did 18 months ago, and we priced that same project in that market today. And we've done this case study in a number of places, but one in particular. And what it showed us is that our material costs have gone up 39% in 18 months. Mm-hmm. To build that building at that same location, the same contractors tell us our cost would be 39% higher. Now, if you say that there's been no impact to a developer, then what you'd have to conclude from that is that rents have gone up 39%, and rents have not gone up 39%. They've gone up, but I think rents have gone up something in the 10 to 15% range in most places. So the only thing that's really allowing us to continue to build, given our method, which is to primarily sell our product rather than assemble a portfolio, is that there's been compression in the exit cap rates.
Right.
If there wasn't compression in the exit cap rates, the target returns that the investors want, we would be shutting down a lot of our projects right now because of this cost issue.
Thanks, Bill. How about you, Don?
Yeah, I would agree with Stu and Bill. And it goes back to my comment about inflation. I mean, with the inflationary pressures we're feeling are very real. But I think that also goes back to Bill's comment about exit cap rates. As long as interest rates continue to stay down, I think we'll continue to see the benefit of demand from the sales side, demand from the exit side. Cap rates, in other words, cap rates are inverse with value. When cap rates go down, prices go up. But once the Fed starts to tighten, once we begin to see that 10-year treasury creep up toward closer to that 2 range, I think we're going to see some change in behavior from international and institutional investors. And I think it's going to really cause us to be even more thoughtful than we have been.
Okay, thanks, Don. We have one last question here from the chat. Neil's asking, are development growth models sustainable under current workforce transportation options? You want to take a go at that one?
Well, I think they have to be. And this gets into, another policy elephant in the room, which is immigration policy, because, these employers need to grow. They need more space, but they can't get people to come to work. And there's a lot of different opinions about that. Why are there roughly 8 million people still out of work in the United States, and there's 12 million empty jobs? But I think that there'll have to be a viable immigration policy that comes out of Congress that allows us to continue to attract workers, because we do need to continue to drive development. There's demand from these companies. We've talked about it, not just the e-commerce, but also bringing manufacturing back. If that ever really starts to pick up momentum, there will be so many job opportunities that we'll have a dearth of people to fill them.
Don?
Well, yeah, go ahead, Don.
Go ahead, Stu.
Well, we keep talking about, how the pandemic has changed things, and it's accelerated some of the changes in this country. Our country still needs to do a better job with mass transit. A lot of the staffing agencies that manufacturers rely on, because they need a permanent workforce and they need a flexible workforce. The staffing agencies are bringing people in converted school buses. And Racine County is blessed with all the new infrastructure. So you got great roads running east and west, continued improvements in that area, dramatically improved Interstate 94. Yes, we still need the additional mass transit and the job demand is there right now in our area, and we're going to benefit from it. We need additional choices. And the big elephant in the room that Bill was talking about, immigration. If somebody comes to this country, it's rare that they come to this country with a driver's license in hand. So it's going to take a while. You have to figure out a way to get them to work, and it can't be done just by seeing how many people you can pile into a car.
Thanks, Stu. And Don, we'll give you the final word here.
Well, I think Stu and Bill both said it well. I mean, labor is one of the biggest challenges we have as an industry. Our customers are challenged by it. Our communities are challenged by it. And there needs to be much more strategic thinking that way. But I think the infrastructure component that we've all talked about, and that's really been a driver for us to see the infrastructure investment that's happened in Racine County, primarily driven by Foxconn. The impact that's had on this county and this area is dramatic. And I think the more investment that happens in the infrastructure side and the more strategic thinking about labor, the more successful long-term we're all going to be.
Thank you, Don. Well, what a great conversation this morning. Our time together has been really informative and insightful, and I think very energizing. So thank you, Don and Stu and Bill, first for your investment in Racine County, and second for providing your insights this morning. A note to everyone that our meeting was recorded, and it will be posted on our RCEDC website for your review. So you'll be able to find it through a quick link. And I want to remind everyone, this is our last Leadership Council meeting for 2021. So I feel like I should be the first to wish you happy holidays, although it feels a little strange at this point. We're already planning next year's Leadership Council meetings and want to continue to welcome the public to these meetings. Our next meeting will be on February 8th. This time we'll focus in on talent. Our April meeting will focus on business financing solutions. Our July meeting will include an economic outlook presentation. And finally, a year from now, our October meeting will once again focus on real estate development. So thank you once again to our fantastic panelists, Don, Bill, and Stu, our Leadership Council, and for everyone who joined us this morning. Have a great day, everybody. We're adjourned.